Welcome to this episode of the Nature of Education podcast. Today I'm speaking with Paul Costello. Paul is a sound and music practitioner. He's also a musician and songwriter and a Wolf Academy Facilitator. So Paul, it's great to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks very much for having me, Cormac. Really delighted to be here.
Yeah, so I'd love to just start off, if you could maybe share a little bit about your own story in terms of how you started to do the work that you're doing, or maybe if you want to go back to how life was for you when you were a teenager, or maybe some of the struggles that you faced yourself that kind of led you on your own journey with music and sound and everything else that you've been doing the last couple of years.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Cormac. So I suppose it really started for me as a teenager. I found that I was very focused on academics, education, and the next step. I was constantly planning and constantly had this vision of what my 5-year plan was, where I was going to be. But every time I made that plan, it just felt that it was a bit false to me, or something that I wasn't really feeling or honouring, say, my intuition, or honouring what I had experienced in that moment. So a lot of the time I was just my head in the books, not really wanting to engage with people around me, and just really focusing on, I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to get out of the countryside, going to, travel and see the world, which is something that I did do, but it was more so that I really felt stuck, because it just felt that my inner world wasn't really matching my outer world, that everything seemed to be going well for me as a teenager, but I just felt internally that I had a lot of anxiety, that I was feeling just really anxious all the time, and quite some depressive moods as well, because I wasn't really honouring how I was feeling. So that really kind of led me to a low enough point when I was in my teens, and I just really found myself just wondering what this was all about. I had no motivation, no passion for life whatsoever. And I suppose people around me were getting worried, and they were asking me, what's going on, Paul? Because I usually be quite a happy person, or had a happy exterior, because I kind of wanted to keep everything above board and, that outward smile and joyful and all this. But yeah, it just really got too much for me, and I was so tired of juggling so many plates that it just really was burnout, and I didn't have the language or the words for that as a teenager as to what that actually meant, or that the way I was feeling so low was just that I was so burnt out from exams and so burnt out from social life, and just really trying to keep a face up with even friends and family and teachers, and the next steps of college, like what you going to do when you get out of secondary school or anything like that. And I just found it so overwhelming, and this decision fatigue that was creeping in. And I was only 18 at the time, and I was just how can I do this for the rest of my life and have so much stuff bottled up inside me? And it was really at that point that I started to look to, say, meditation, and I started to look to other practices as well that would help me. So it first started off as mindfulness, and I started going to counselling and therapy. But at that point, I was forced to go to counselling, and as a boy, or as a young man at that point, I was I am not talking about my feelings. I am not talking about my emotions whatsoever. And they stared at me, and I stared back at that counsellor, and we were just looking at each other, and we're it was a stone wall. And then they're I can't help you. And I was actually so offended, because I was getting rejected by a therapist. And I was at that point, I realised, it had to start with me. I had to take the first step and build a bridge and want to look for help. So at that point, I started to actively look for help. And it was really at that point that I started to, look into other forms of healing as well, so other modalities. And I always found growing up that I was playing music all the time, and constantly that was my safe space, or as well as reading and books, music was a big safe space for me. So and that gave me a lot of space to connect with myself, but I didn't know what that was either. I just had this feeling this felt good. This felt like a place where I could actually have nearly more of an expansion in my body, or there was room for feeling, because people would talk about that in music a lot of the time. You can feel the music, or dance, or whatever. And yeah, so that was an outlet for me. So I found then that I was looking into meditation and using guided meditation. And I came across this drumming track before, and it was just like the beat of a drum, and I was just like, the rhythm just really went straight to my heart, and I was like, what is this? And I couldn't really understand what I was seeing or what I was feeling when I just heard this drum, and it got me really curious about indigenous cultures around the world, but also within Ireland. And it really led me on to so many modalities, I suppose. There was elements that I dabbled in, say, shamanism. I went into sound and music as a therapeutic practice as well, so ended up training in that. And that kind of followed me, say, into my mid-20s, early 20s. And while that was all going on, I was actually in college studying science because I'd picked that path still of not really listening to myself and looking for, say, like a solid career or solid career option, which is a good thing to do, to look for stability in life. But at the same time, if you're not honouring what you love, it's not really going to be sustainable. So it was kind of like I was juggling these two parts of myself where there was this very scientific mind, but there was also this side that was looking into, say, more spiritual or maybe stuff that isn't often talked about. So even our emotions, and then what is consciousness, and then at the same time I was looking into electrons and molecules and statistical thermodynamics, which are fascinating, but at the same time I was like, I can't connect to this because I can't even connect to myself. And I was kind of looking around, and that logical scientific side of me was really, it was a protector, really. When I was looking back at it, it was a place where I could shut off emotion, engage with learning, and look at this very methodical and logical way of being. And I feel like it's a really powerful way to be, to have logic and reason. And it's nearly like that masculine archetype. But then when I was kind of looking into the feminine side, I was like, my feminine side is rejected almost. And it was like bringing those two sides of that masculine and that feminine into balance, or those archetypes. So it was nearly like looking to these modalities was a way of connecting with my intuition, but also connecting with myself, which allowed me to connect with community and my dreaming life as well. So I suppose I could go on about dreams as well, because that's a big part of my practice too, which I was getting very intensive dreams while I was, in my teens and my later teens as well. So dreams really informed my practice as well, of that I'd be dreaming about things that I'd be repressing. And I was like writing down my dreams. I had a dream journal. I had a regular meditation journal that would come up in that. And I was looking into analysis of that. And that led me on a whole other journey as well, of actually going to Zimbabwe to meet a man that specialised in dreams, which would be part of their culture in the Shona tradition of Zimbabwe. And that was a whole other way of being as well. So it was really like I was looking into other ways of understanding myself and other ways of knowledge or pathways of knowledge that wasn't just, say, like empirical or scientific knowledge, or like our, I suppose, modern way of thinking in Ireland and maybe in other countries as well. But then go into practices of indigenous cultures, or even Canada or North America, or just South America as well, that drawn from these areas that had so much maybe wisdom held from their lineage or from their tradition. I was like, this is completely valid too, and this is a way of being that has been honoured throughout time. And I think it was nearly like I felt in myself there might have been a tether cut there too, to my own practice, my own lands of what my ancestors did, or how I connected with them too. So I was even thinking about like willow weaving, or Shano's song, or even our own language. So I was just fascinated about what I would even say is a reclamation of my own identity as someone from Ireland, but also just connecting to the practices that helped me to connect with myself. So that's really how I found myself going into these modalities, and going into sound, and going into music, and dreaming life, and shamanic practices as well. So, and then I ended up with the Wolf Academy, which was such an amazing experience. And it was like a place where I could blend all of these things that I learned, and just nearly connect with a younger part of myself as well, and then connect with young people through that too. So it was, that journey of honoring my feeling, my intuition, and other ways of knowledge, or other ways of understanding knowledge and wisdom.
Wow, that's a great introduction. I'm like, there's so much in that I would love to delve into, and maybe we'll delve into it throughout the podcast as we go through. But just even going back to the start of your journey, what I just noticed, what was really interesting to me that I see a lot of still today is this. You mentioned how, as a young person, you were doing well, externally in terms of exams and all of that stuff wasn't a problem, but your inner world was being neglected, and you felt the need to put on this mask of everything's fine, and you were kind of the happy-go-lucky person. And I think a lot of people don't really see that as a problem. We see young people who are like, oh, they're happy-go-lucky, they're doing well in their exams. They don't have any problems with their well-being. We would just assume, if we didn't know any better, we would just assume they're fine and they're not the ones that need the help. Because when I'm talking to principals and teachers, like what we do is, yes, it is for people who are really struggling outwardly, but it's also for everyone, because we all have, different struggles and different things that are maybe not as connected within ourselves. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting how you were, doing well on the outside, but inside there was, probably a neglect of that emotional side, because you never had anyone to teach you that. That was never, part of the curriculum in school. And it's not something that's easy to connect with unless, there's some sort of guidance in that way. And as you said, you were looking for guidance and support through the therapist, which, didn't really meet your needs at that time. And it's great that you were able to find those supports yourself. But I think it's what we're trying to do is make that bridge a bit easier for young people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like constantly looking. It's like that, and it was nearly like finding someone as well I had a good relationship with. Yeah, as you were saying, it was like not on the curriculum. It was very much like go through it and go really quickly through it, and you have to be independent and learn. And you are supported, and teachers do support you in that. But it's very hard to accommodate a holistic approach to education, a holistic approach to well-being. What is your well-being in that frame too? So no, there was a lot to learn there with that too. Yeah.
And I think that's a good point you make, because like there is SPHE in Ireland and there is more focus being put on well-being in schools, but I think one of the problems that is still there is there's so much that schools and teachers are trying to get through in terms of the curriculum that it becomes nearly an added stress to try and add on well-being, and it's like it's adding to the stress, which is completely counterintuitive when you think about it. And sometimes it can be more learning about it rather than, but again, it's maybe head knowledge rather than actually experiencing what it's like to actually feel into your intuition or sit with your emotions. And head knowledge can only get you so far. And I think you spoke about that really well in terms of you were always living in your more masculine, logical thinking and planning for the future and that kind of intellectual side, but you had neglected that feminine side. You can call it feminine, you can call it yin and yang, masculine, feminine, whatever you want to say, but you neglected that side, and that's what happens us in school. We get so focused on the logical and the theory that we actually neglect the embodied experience of what it is to be a human and feel emotions and feel the whole spectrum of that. So it's I think that's just important to highlight that as well, because we can learn about well-being, but it's like, can we actually practice it is a different thing.
Yeah, like that's the big thing I've even recently discovered was it's a practice that you have to keep going with the practice, and it's something that you keep adding to your toolboxes. So like as a young person, like that's really what I was doing. I was collecting these resources that would work with me throughout that time for what I was going through. So when I first started, I really needed something gentle and a soft approach, or a softer approach to healing or talk therapy. But there's also like gentle meditation, gentle practices. Like there was, co-regulation, like hands-on, like craniosacral therapy. And I was exploring everything, because I had this kind of felt sense that I needed that support. And it was almost as if like people are like, why are you going to all these people? And I was just like, because there's something wrong. I know there's something that isn't matching up. It was like my inner world wasn't matching up with my outer world. And that's like my favorite thing to look at right now is just seeing how am I waking up every day? I was reading a book recently, and I'm trying to apply that practice too of like the way of the leopard. And it was just a really interesting way of approaching that when you first wake up in the morning to honor all of your senses. So what's the first thing you smell? What's the first thing that you see, taste, hear? How does your body feel? And I just really think like even having that slow morning or having that slow approach to the day is actually something that sets me up for the day. So that's something that's been incorporated into my practice of waking up like a leopard or honoring my more animalistic side. So it sounds a bit ridiculous at times, but I'm like, well, we are animals that seem that we gained a bit more consciousness, or we think we're clever.
Yeah.
And I just realized like I have no idea what's going on, and I'm like I'd like to know what's going on and try and understand and grasp what's going on, but like yeah, it's just been like I think since I started honoring my feeling and honoring my emotion, but also being aware of like where that emotion is coming from. Is that like something from, is that a fear, or is that something that's in my nervous system a long time? Or but like really honoring your true feeling of when I'm going into a situation or going into an experience or an opportunity, is this sitting with me? Is this actually like something that is good for me, rather than this is a danger? So it's kind of like a filtering process too of, it's a long way of getting to know yourself again and getting to know what your way your intuition works, and honoring the top of the crown and the stomach as well. And I always talk about the cauldrons as well. So in there's a poem, the poem of Poesy, and it talks about the cauldrons, and it's an ancient Irish poem, and it's a practice that I've incorporated into my own life as well, of working with your lower cauldron, your middle cauldron, and your top cauldron as well. And that's a shamanic approach as well, you can say, or core shamanic approach. Instead of using chakras or those kind of energy centers, you're using your cauldrons. And really, it's just like the lower cauldron is the place of safety, or it's the place of where you fill up your unconscious needs and desires and how you really are. And then middle cauldron is the cauldron of vocation, and that's where you're going in life. And then the top cauldron is your cauldron of inspiration. So it's like the lower cauldron is said to have been born upright in everyone. The middle
And
cauldron,
sorry, Paul, just for those who aren't maybe watching, if you're just listening, the lower cauldron
yeah,
would be around your belly area, and then the
yeah,
middle
yeah,
kind of around the heart, and then upper around the head.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the cauldron, the top cauldron is like the head. Yeah. So that would be where they're located. But the middle cauldron would be for the vocation, or where you're going in life. And they say that that's kind of like, it's kind of wobbly when you're being in your teens. So it's kind of like it's not upright, it's not balanced. And then the top one is upside down. So it's like it's really like you have to fill from the bottom, and then the other cauldrons they start to become upright or balanced then completely when all of your base needs are looked after, and you know where you're going in life. And then inspiration starts to light up when you have all of those needs met, or that you honor all those parts of yourself as well. So I really like using that.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't too much experience of the cauldrons, but I have learned a bit about it. But I would use the three energy centers from, if you look at Chinese medicine, they have the dantians, lower, upper, middle. I suppose the same kind of way of looking at it. And then I think with all of these, I suppose they're kind of ways of looking at ourselves and our connection to ourselves in different ways, and they're all just kind of frameworks and models that we can use to help understand ourselves better. And like with the chakras as well, I would also use them at different times to understand the needs of the different energy centers in the body. Yeah, some people might think it's a bit woo woo, but I think it's quite practical as well when you look into it, when you actually study these things. It makes a lot of sense. Like when you're talking about meeting your needs from childhood, your need for safety, your need to be attuned to, and all of those kind of core survival needs. And then you move up. Like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you could probably map that onto the chakras if you wanted as well. So it's really useful to look at all these models and start to understand what is that developmental journey. And that's something we're trying to do at Wolf Academy, is look at how can we bring young people through that journey in a way that fits their level of development at that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they're all tools and techniques, and it's really what you're adding to your own toolbox, what you're adding to your own. Like you talked about the Wolf Academy a good bit, like of the backpack. Like, what are your passions and values that you put into the backpack? And it's
Mm.
like I'd nearly consider, like, say working with, say, the cauldrons or working with the chakras, even if it's a body scan. It's a
Yeah.
way of seeing what's going on with your body at that current moment in time, and as it's grounded in reality, and it's helping you, that side is helping you to inform your everyday life as well. So there are practices that you can have, even going to breath work, focus on your breathing, as like, what way am I breathing today? People have spoken about that in the podcast as well, just about their breathing, and just such a powerful technique to use as well. Or like, I use sound because that's something I've always connected with. So I came across, working with sound because it's a sensory experience, and that's really helped me to connect with my body.
Mm.
It's helped me to connect with what my hearing is, because sometimes I'm listening to things all the time, and I'd say I'd be mixing something like on a music software, and I'd be like, I'd take my headphones off and I'd actually love the silence after. I'd be like, wow, I didn't realize how nice silence was. I just think that there's so much overstimulation, even in my own life, but even in the everyday of like nearly waking up and you're like, this is the agenda, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do for the week. And there's so much noise, there's so much sound. And I'm like, well, what I like to do is, if we're intentional with our sound, or if there's a space to be intentional with sound, of like, I'm making this sound right now, and this sound is for this experience, or this sound
Mm.
is to be paired with this other note to bring balance, or to maybe target a certain part of the body, or it might
Mm.
not target that person's body. Or it's just really coming down to who's in the room with you, or how I am in the room at that time, and just really focusing in on that felt experience too. So
Mm.
I
Yeah.
just found that that's a really powerful practice for myself. And as I was saying, it's just whatever tools and techniques work for you. It could be running, it could be weightlifting, it could be any sorts of things. It could be running
Yeah.
up a mountain and screaming. I don't know. As long as you're safe and you're well,
Yeah.
that's all that matters.
I'd recommend that one. I've done it a few times. It does help. But
I have to.
yeah, but I love what you're saying there about the sound, and it just made me think about how most of us most of the time we're so, yes, overstimulated with noise and visually as well. If you're looking at your phone or Instagram, it's just constant visuals and sound, and
Mm.
it can fry the nervous system a little bit, and that's why a big part of the reason we're probably living in such a stressed out society. But I was even thinking about sound, and when we're in conversation in groups, or even when we meet people, what I've noticed is with a lot of people there's almost an uncomfortableness to actually sit in that silence, or like to
Mm.
allow any silence. So we just talk, like
Mm.
it doesn't matter what we're saying, we're just talking, saying something. I would be more naturally quiet anyway, but yeah, I'd happily sit in a bit of a silence, and I can just notice the awkward feeling if someone else has to sit in that. So we just try to fill that space. But I think, as you said there, like when you're listening to sound constantly and then you actually sit with the silence, it's really beautiful,
Mm.
and that's where a lot of those answers start to come in the silence, because you actually give yourself time to reflect, or time to listen, rather than just that constant noise. So yeah, I loved that, and I've been at some of your sound journeys, and I've seen them with different groups that we've done the sound journeys, and that silence at the end of this whole journey through all of these sounds. And the sound does, like for me, my experience of it is, yeah, it does seem to bring you on a journey, whether it's like in your mind. You can also, yeah, sometimes feel how the sound is interacting with different parts of your body. But that feeling at the end of the silence, that's when I really feel how my body has changed from the beginning of the journey. I can feel
Mm.
this like vibration and this connection, and yeah, it's an amazing experience, and I think it's probably one you need to experience rather than talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's actually happening there with the body, like what's going on in that journey.
Yeah. Are you asking me?
I am.
All right. I was like, I don't know. That's why people are asking me what's going on there, and I'm like, I don't know. I probably should know. I know, I do know. I'd like, I like to say to people, like, I can tell you what's going on, but like what's going on for you, you
Mm.
know, there, like you're experiencing that, and I can't tell you, you know, that's that's your way of connecting with yourself. Is like, well, that means that in my body, and that means that there, but I just like I can give you like this sound makes this kind of low frequency. So like for example, I'd make a bird noise, and oftentimes bird sounds would relax our body, or high frequency sounds would relax the body a bit more because we'd associate that with safety. And then when we come down to lower frequencies, it's a bit scarier for us because I don't know, maybe it's because predators had a lower tone in their voice, you know, even like a lion or something like that, or deep
Mm.
sounds. They're a bit scarier to us. So they might alert us to danger, or they might be a bit, yeah. So they be, and certain rhythms as well would be really bring us into maybe a transcendental state as well. They'd be used throughout a lot of societies as well, or even shamanic societies, or just nomadic people or indigenous cultures would have used rhythm and sound to help them access a different way of being, or sometimes I call it non-ordinary reality. So that's literally you're stepping out of your regular day to day, and you're stepping into a place that you wouldn't normally think of things in the way you normally do. So
Mm.
that's nearly bringing in that creativity aspect as well, of we're stepping out of our everyday duties and our identity of who we are as like Paul, or who we are as Cormac, and we're stepping into this place where we're open to everything. We're open to ideas from and inspiration from unexpected places. And you're stepping into that with the sound journey as well. And what I like to do with the sound journey, not to give away all my secrets, but I like to make it as random as possible. So
Mm.
I don't want the brain to attach to a rhythm. I don't want it to attach to a melody, and I don't want it to attach to words, because we're always talking, we're always chatting away, and we'll always understand language. But like that's one thing. I could go down a rabbit hole about language. Like the way you speak, like
Mm.
shapes like what you see in the world too.
Mm.
It shapes your reality and the words you use, and so like I'm like the less we can talk and the more we can just hear and experience, that'll enhance your journey.
Mm.
So you'll be like, well, I wouldn't normally think of things in that way. It's like, okay, well, we're not thinking right now, we're feeling, and we're also using maybe we're using a sense or a place of intuition or wisdom that we wouldn't normally have access to, because it takes a very long time, say, to get into that state. You know, it's nearly the 50-minute mark, you know, because the sound journey maybe would be 50 minutes or so. And it's nearly like that 45 to 50-minute mark that people are like, oh, I'm getting into it now. And I'm like, oh, ding, we're done.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, because it does take that long, because it's a practice. But each time you do a sound journey, or each time you do something, it takes less and less time to get into that space, because you'll have mentally prepared and physically, and all your bodies will have prepared, you know, even your emotional field and everything. So
Mm.
it's, it's like, yeah, you're trying to access, say, that state of, first of all, rest and relax. And that's state number one, where you're calm in your body, you're calm in your space, and that you trust everything and the facilitators around you, or you just trust, you know, the sounds that are coming through. And then you're like, okay, so that's safe. My body's safe. And then when you're safe to journey, you can float away, and you can go with the sounds, you can go with the rhythms,
Mm.
and you can go into that deep place, that place of you, that part of you that is, yeah, just constantly inspired. So that place of
Mm.
inspiration and that place of wisdom, I'd say, that we
Yeah.
all have access to. We all have. It's our place of power, I'd say.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, I was just thinking of someone maybe asking the question, why is it important for us to go into that place? Why not just stay here, and and no need to go any deeper. There's no need to
Mm.
go into that non-ordinary reality, or whatever you want to refer to it as.
Mm.
So yeah, what would you say to that? And I know you mentioned creativity as one of the
Yeah,
sources of, but apart from creativity, what else is the
yeah.
importance of going into that space?
Well, I think, yeah, creativity is one, but also it's connecting to our own voice, connecting to our own power, and connecting to just our own sense of direction. So, like, there's so much information. Like, I think I've nearly been emptying out all the information I've learned since I was 5 in the past couple of years, because I'm like, you're constantly learning, and you probably will always be learning. But like, there comes a point where it's like, there's so much information in my head right now. There's so much information, you know, that I'm still trying to process. And I'm like, when are you going to experience it? You know, like,
Mm.
when So I think it's nearly important to take that space and take that time to actually be like, okay, okay, Paul. So we did all that. What are we doing now? And what are we doing with all that information? And a quote that I really like. I'm going to put a quote in here now because I researched that. it's like it's like wisdom is knowledge that's felt, and there was a symbol that was a metaphor that was used was that the eagle would fly into after gaining all this knowledge from the high skies and seeing everything that was going on around them, that they would dive into the water, the lake, and they'd come out with wisdom because they went into the feeling, they went into the emotion, they went into the water after connecting with knowledge from a higher vantage point. And then they came out and they were like, "Well, I'm all good.
Yeah.
I'm wise
Well,
now."
maybe I'm just thinking maybe they went down into the water and ate the salmon of knowledge. Maybe
That could
that's
be
how
it.
that story
That could
links up. But no, I love that. Yeah, that quote is, yeah, for me it's embodying the knowledge rather than, yeah, just having it in your head, because, yeah, it's not very useful up there.
be.
I think, again, our culture honors, or probably reveres, those with all of this head knowledge, because our whole educational system is geared towards that, like just cramming as much information into your head as you can, and then regurgitating it out onto an exam paper, and then going to college and
Mm.
doing the same thing, and then
Yeah.
doing a PhD is like the pinnacle of, the education system. But again, it's
Mm.
not necessarily embodied knowledge, which I think is, especially in this time that we're in now, it's more important, because it's always been important. But
Mm.
if AI has all the answers, then why do we need to have it all in our heads? If it's
Mm.
all on, the technology is always going to get the answers probably quicker than us. So, not to say that knowledge and, head knowledge is not important to some extent, but I think, yeah, as you were saying there, it's going back down into the water and actually feeling it and experiencing it. And that's, yeah, where, as you said, where your power is, that's where the juice of life is. That's
Yeah.
probably one of the reasons people are so stressed and depressed, is
Mm.
because we're so stuck in our heads. We're not actually enjoying life,
Yeah.
or even experiencing it properly.
Yeah.
It's like a disconnection.
Yeah, yeah, and I often felt like even for myself, I was like logically, and like I know what's going on right now, and I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it,
Mm.
and I don't know why I'm not doing it, and it's like I feel like that's nearly the state of even burnout, but also, you know, that's what I was coming up with as well. It was like there's so much knowledge and so much information out there, and it's nearly about picking a path because you can't really devote yourself to all of the knowledge streaming in or all the information or just like the
Mm.
content that's coming in constantly. So it's nearly like being really it's about getting really selective about what you consume and what you create
Mm.
because I really think that we should be creating more so than consuming. And it's really important to say like go into like with any sort of skill or any sort of art or any sort of practice in general. I just think it's really important to create and give back to that field or create and go deeper into yourself so that you can experience how you experience that knowledge and how it's going to come out through you too.
Mm.
So I just feel like it's really important. So like for young people and then for anyone really that they delve deeply into a practice and that they have something that they can always hold on to as they journey on, and that's going to evolve and change. But at the same
Mm.
time, if they have their fundamentals of their values and they have their fundamentals of how they can stay well or how they can connect to themselves in times of stress and that they're resilient in that, that's that's
Mm.
where that's where, as you said, the juice of life is, and that's how you're constantly going to renew yourself. And I think that's really what the symbol of the cauldrons are, that you're filling up inspiration from, say, your base needs up and down, and then it's a cyclical thing. And that's another thing that's really helped me too, is seeing that we're in cycles all the time. That even that we are in, say, like the cycles of the seasons and the cycles of all of that. Like, so it's just
Mm.
really a powerful practice to use that we're cyclical in everything. And I just like that
Yes.
symbol even in Irish culture too, of the spiral of,
Mm.
and you talk about that too, Cormac, the spiral of well-being with the Wolf Academy as well. So it's just really cool to see that link up even in the Wolf Academy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I've for me as well, it's those, yeah, those cyclical periods that we go through are so important for living well, because, you know, say if you just stay always on like the culture is set up for at the moment, you tend to hit burnout because you don't get that rest, that winter period, which we all need. We all need that time to slow down and switch off for a while and disconnect from our work and reconnect to ourselves or our partners and our families. And yeah, so I think for me, like as you said, there's so many tools and there's so many things you could be doing for your well-being that sometimes it can become overwhelming. And I did reach a stage where I was probably trying to do too many things, and the stress of trying to do all the not helping. So it's, yeah, as you said, just trying different things and finding what works for you, and then also realizing that, you know, we're all going through this spiral of this cycle at this moment in time, and maybe right now my practice just needs to be to sit in the silence. Maybe in the summertime my practice could be dancing. Like I went through periods of, that was my morning practice, was just to dance and move the energy that way. And sometimes it's deeper meditation, sometimes it's more focused around, you know, tough exercise, but it's it's just finding what resonates with you, or what mix of things resonates with you. But I really wanted to also, you mentioned creativity a few times, and I know that's something that's really important to you. And I love how you said you feel we should be creating more than we consume. And again, we live in a culture of just consuming constantly. So it's nearly hard for us to create unless we really, you know, I'm a writer myself, or I call myself one at least. And it's really been a practice of creating boundaries to allow myself to write, like to not go on my phone in the mornings. I never do that anyway. I always give myself a couple of hours before I would, you know, connect in with technology like that. But it's just giving myself those spaces to be creative and allow that creativity to flow through. And the less I consume, the more creative I tend to be, which is interesting, because you might assume you need to take in loads of knowledge to create, but sometimes there's a balance there. Or how does that work for you?
Yeah, so like that's a thing I love talking about, is a creative practice. It's a good old talking point for me. And like it was I spent the last year learning about my own creative practice and learning about other people's creative practices. So yeah, I studied masters in songwriting, going against everything I just said there the past 40 minutes, but I went and I did a master's anyway. And that's where I kind of started to kind of engage with my creative practice, which was songwriting in a more formal way. So before that, I was writing songs, and I didn't really call myself a songwriter. I was just like, I'm writing songs or I'm playing music. And I think that was a talk point there of identity there. So it's like, you're even saying you are a writer, you write. So that's like, it's really important to claim those parts of ourselves. And that was like step one. So step one, claim that you are this thing that you do. And then I think what it is that, the creative practice, how it would look for me would vary from day to day, but it's literally about opening up the space. So on this day, I am going to honor myself by giving this amount of time to, you know, get into that creative thing, get into that creative act. And I was like using The Artist's Way as a Bible nearly. So that's a really good book that if you ever want to look into creativity, it's more of I say holistic way, or a way of looking at creativity too. So there's some techniques in there that you can use, but I only actually recently discovered that, and I was doing it my own way before this. So with that, there was reflexive writing. So it wasn't actually writing, say, about what we had just written, or say in a song or music, because it's hard to talk about that with words a lot of the time, explaining why you wrote this or where this inspiration came from. But that was a really important thing to do as well, was to write down like how I was feeling after I wrote, how I was feeling before I wrote, and just what was going on with me and what were my inspirations. So when I started to do that, I realized, oh, this actually came from, say, when I visited this forest, and I came across this story of Queen Maeve, or I came across this story of Knockmah Woods. So that was actually one of the songs, and it was called The Chase of Connemara that I had written, and it was based on the Chase of Cooley, and that was an old mythological story in Ireland, and I was really inspired by that, and I found that folk tales and tradition and story were really informing my practice as a songwriter. So it felt really important for me. I don't know why I took it on myself. I was like, I'm going to just go into folklore and write songs about folklore, and I'm going to do that for a bit. And I did that for a bit, and I found it really, really fascinating. I learned so much about mythology and folklore. But then I was also like, well, that's a lot of information as well. So I'll see how I'm going on, or what's going on with me.
Mm.
And I suppose I was like, I'm going to take a break from folk writing for a bit and songs that were had a lot of concepts like that, and just write for myself. And that's where I was drawing inspiration from. Was drawing inspiration from how I was feeling at the time. And I didn't realize, but I wrote a song about a friend who had passed away, and I didn't realize that was a couple of years ago that that had happened, and I didn't realize how much that still impacted me. I did, of course, but I still, when I started to write that song, I finally gave myself that space to access that grief. And I suppose even in the song, the first line, it was the last text that they had sent me. So that was the first line in the song. And I just really found then that it was a really beautiful way of expressing that grief as well, because I had grieved, but I hadn't expressed maybe the grief of how lucky I was to have met them, or how lucky I was to have
Mm.
shared time with them. And that's what that song was about. So, yeah. And it was like, yeah, it was a very simple song, but it was probably, I never shared it with anyone, and I probably never will. But well, at this current time anyway, but it was still important for me to create that. And
Mm.
that's how my practice kind of evolved, was going from, there's songs I love to do research in, there's songs I love to do that in, or, just write about. But then there's also that place of just honoring what, what's going to come up on that day of, say, the 18th of
Mm.
February, 2026, what's going to come up today, and just honoring that. And I'm
Yes.
always I'm always surprised by what's going to come up. And you know I'm always really amazed at how intelligent the body is. I'm like, I think the mind is clever, but I'm like, the body is so smart, and it's always humbling to me. It's always kicking me. It's always like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's why you protected me there. Oh, that's why you didn't want me to go to that space, or that's why you didn't want me to go into that just yet.
Mm.
We're not
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, definitely the body is fascinating. I suppose just when you're speaking about the body there, it's our body stores all of our emotions, but also, yeah, what else is it in your body that's telling you? Is that your intuition, or like, when you're saying the body there is indicating things, or yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose it's a bit of both. It's like, yeah, the intuition, like, would be, for me, like, my intuition, I'd say, is nearly my gut instinct. So that's my intuition. It's just like, it's very fast, it's very quick. And then for my body, that would be like bodily sensations. So say
Mm.
sometimes it might be like, say, a somatic release. So somatic as in, like, I just feel like, say, my left quad go crazy for ages, or there'd be kind of a release of something there, or even my torso, I just feel like all of this, say, tension release from my muscles and my body. And it's only like, as in, really, like, that's past information, or that's past stored, I don't know, experience in my body that I didn't feel safe enough to release at the time. And then the
Mm.
intuition is a place of honoring my yes, honoring my no. It's very fast, and it's not nearly, it's never in words a lot of the time. It's more so a feeling, and it's a feeling that's a grounded feeling too. It's not just like yes, no, yes. It's like,
Mm.
as you develop a relationship with it, or as you get closer to it, it gets faster. And it's like any relationship, it's just like, you have to strengthen it. You have to visit it on anniversary days. You have to give it flowers, and you do that. And, on my birthday, like, a birthday, I think, is a big milestone as well. And that's a day to really
Mm.
honor the body. That's when you're born.
Mm.
You were given
True.
life that day. So I think it's an
Mm.
important day for the body too. It's like, another year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, this the those sensations that are releasing in your body. If you the analogy that's often used is a gazelle being chased by a lion, and then they get away, and then they might lie there and start shaking to release all of the trauma, or like the fear in the
Yeah.
body that they didn't have time to release at that time. So as humans, yeah, all those traumas we experience throughout our childhood, any trauma throughout our life, if we don't release that out of the body, it's kind of stored in the body somewhere, and it can
Mm.
cause energy blocks and
Yeah.
depression, and it can cause anxiety. And I think sometimes, when young people are actually feeling, some of this anxiety or whatever they're feeling, I think sometimes we think it's always a bad thing, but actually, if we give them the spaces to move through that feeling and actually feel it and let it move through the body, then they'll
Mm.
be able to come out on the other side of it without having to hold it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, like
Mm.
that's the dream.
That's the
Just
dream.
that's the dream. Just enough space to just really access how you're feeling in that moment. And
Mm.
that's just like, that was one thing I was always wondering about. Everyone was talking about the present moment and present time. I'm like, what is that?
Mm. Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't really get
Yeah.
it. And then it just finally clicked when I actually was like, yeah. So it's just like,
Mm.
just, they're like, just be. And I'm like, it's so hard to just be.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
like,
That's
it's a
that's
practice
like
too. Like,
yeah. I think
yeah.
that just B is step 100. It's like you need to go through a
Yeah.
few more steps first.
Yeah, you do. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like when you are being, there are a lot of things that come up, and there are a lot of things that pull you on side quests. And I'm like,
Mm.
you'll get stuck in the side quests, but then it's just like that you can be then when all of that is cleared as well too, and going back to that
Mm.
presence. And I think that's a big thing. And yeah, so going back to that about creativity, that's my long-winded way of just explaining my
Mm.
creativity and creative practice and why I think it's important for people as well. And I actually think as well, say like if you are in a certain modality of creativity, like say if you're in music or if you're in art, I actually think it's really important to go to another art form and be inspired by that, because, you know, when I work at sound or when I work with music, I'm working with something abstract. Like you can't bottle sound. Well, I don't know, maybe you can, but you can't bottle it as far as I know. And with music, you can't. You can record it, but like, you know, it's never the same as the physical experience of, the molecules vibrating through the air and you hearing that and going through your nervous system and you computing that and understanding that. But like, yeah, as I was saying, I think it's important to say, go to an art gallery and look at that and take those days, like those artist days, or yeah, like that's talked
Mm.
about in the book as well. And it's just a really important thing to have those times and have those spaces of, today I'm going to visit an art gallery, or I'm going to go to a coffee shop and I'm just going to sit there and write, or I'm just going to go for a forest walk, or I'm going to do this. And it's making those
Mm.
non-negotiables, I'd say, those days of, this is just for me, and it's not selfish, and I'm taking this time away from busy lives or busy school days or busy teaching days or anything like that. And just, you're doing it for other people too. Like, the way, if you look after yourself, you're going to look after everyone else around you as well. You'll have more space, more capacity for others. So it's not selfish to take time for yourself. It's not selfish
Mm.
to put down things for a day and be like, I'm not lazy. Like, productivity is not the end goal of creativity. Being
Mm.
creative is the goal of creativity. It's just to actually allow yourself to be creative. I firmly believe, and I will die on this, is that everyone is creative. And I think everyone can sing. Everyone says to me they
Mm.
can't sing. Everyone has a voice. I feel like everyone can sing. And it's just more so about our social conditioning, or who said, you're good at this, you're not good at this, you're good at this, try
Mm.
this. You
Yeah.
get points in this area, you can go to do this course. And it's just like tying worth to that external thing. Whereas I feel like when you're connecting to your intuition, connecting to your body, connecting to your creativity, that's where the gold dust is. That's the most
Mm.
important step to take. And
Mm.
that's how you generate new ideas. That's how you give value back to people around you, to give value back to yourself and community as well. So,
Mm.
um, yeah. So it
Beautiful.
all
Beautiful.
starts with you and me. It all starts on the inner plane.
No, I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I completely agree whenever someone says to me they can't sing. Like, I remember when I was younger, I was told I was a bad singer, and that was motivation for me to practice singing and become better. And I have become better. And I love what you said earlier about that song you wrote for your friend. It's not with the focus of have to share it. I think sometimes we think, like, because we've grown up in the culture of these musicians and artists who, release their songs to the world, we think a song needs to be shared, but it's the process, as you said, of creating that song and singing it for
Mm,
yourself was the healing part. It's like that
yeah.
creativity and expression for you was for you. and for your connection with your friend rather than the rest of the world. And I think, yeah, we need to, or if we could, start looking at creativity like that, like something that we do firstly for
Mm.
ourselves to allow that to flow through us, then
Yeah.
we'd be on to, I think, a better path. And then the beauty of it is what I found from writing poetry is when I really just write for myself and just express what's really going on without thinking I'm going to post this on Instagram and see how many likes I get, it just comes
Mm.
out fully raw and more
Mm.
real. And then after I'm like, oh God, maybe I should share that because maybe some of them I don't share, but when I do share those real ones that I did just for me, people tend to resonate even more. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of art, that it can be shared and other people can resonate with it. But even in the
Mm.
workshops we say to the students, you don't have to share it, and it could be just for you. But if you feel you want to, then yeah, more than welcome. So yeah, I think just to remember that it's like we don't have to be same with, like, I remember we did a teacher training there for last year for some teachers in the EU, and so we invited them to do some art after we did breathwork, and they were all looking at me like, "What do I draw? How do I do this?" I was just like,
Mm.
"Just you don't have to think about it. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. Just allow yourself to express and be creative."
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just so conditioned to be judged on it or marked as a fail or things like that. So yeah, I really love that
Yeah.
message.
Yeah, no, like that's everyone can sing. I don't care. Yeah, anyone takes
Yeah.
anything. You can sing. Yeah, you can tone. You came into the world with a beautiful voice. Use it.
Mm, yeah, exactly. Do you want to sing us a song before we finish? A Shano song.
Shadow song. I don't even know a shadow song. What I do? I don't even have the words to it, Carl. Let
I'm
me
putting you
see.
on the spot there. That wasn't on the show notes, but I just when
Mm,
you're thinking of that. But just before you go into that, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on you spoke about a few times about indigenous cultures, and
mm,
I think for me as well, they hold a lot of the wisdom that we're probably
mm,
looking for in our modern times. We don't necessarily have to recreate everything. Sometimes when you look back, there is practices there that have been done for thousands of years to help humans connect with each other and with
mm.
themselves and with the earth. And I suppose, yeah, at Wolf Academy, we do also incorporate those practices that we feel are still important. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, like even connecting back to the language of your own land, like our land here of Ireland, connecting to the Irish
Mm.
language, connecting to those traditions like Shano singing and stuff like that is yeah, I think it heals something as well, doesn't it? It heals
It
some
does
part of the
actually.
soul. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I wrote a song in Irish, like a lullaby, because I was really inspired by the
Mm.
lullabies of Ireland, and it was like, sure, I'll give you a bit of it. My voice is a bit croaky at the moment, so it's like Cade an scéal stórin, thula mé na héine nuair a tháinig tú ar ais, an tír na hóige, is fear i lathu. Is fear illahu ach tasty and wedge dul colla. So that's a bit of one anyway.
Mm.
So
Brilliant. Love that.
yeah, I was really inspired by the Irish lullabies. I didn't even realize this was a thing as well. But like, yeah, Irish lullabies would be passed on from mother to baby, and it was like a really cool. It's a really cool tradition in Ireland, and it's still well alive, even in some songs. Like, so yeah, like I think there are so many oral traditions and folk traditions that are still well alive. And it's just more so about looking for them again. And I think that's a really important thing too, to honor. Yeah. So
Mm.
even that song there was like, it was about, my intention was to write that for like a baby. So I don't know, loads of my friends are having babies. So I was like, sure, I'll write a song because it seems to be in the air at the moment. So yeah, it's about actually um, restoring your creative center and your creativity. So is Fear Fella who you're a true poet. So you're going to the other world. And I didn't realize until I started looking into it as well that yeah, like Tirnanog or is the land of the young, but it's also the land of dreaming as well. So that's the place where in the tradition that it was in some folk tales, it was said that a baby would journey to the other world or would journey to the place of dreams and come back with more information or come back inspired. So that song was basically about it's important to rest and go to the other world or go to that place of inspiration and come back with that information. And then you're a true poet, is Fear Filla. You're a right old poet. So, but you have to sleep right now. That's one thing. That's the
Mm.
requirement. So, yeah. So I really like that too.
Well, it's a beautiful song, first of all, and a message to people, not just to babies, but to
Yeah.
everyone to like to rest. And it's something they've really struggled with for many years, is to properly rest, just
Yeah.
allowing ourselves to really slow down and rest.
Mm,
And then all of this creative fire seems to flow from that, and
yeah.
this optimism for life comes from that rest. So yeah, I think it's so
Mm,
important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, that was the one thing as well that it was leading back to, like, say, a culture I was reading about was like the San Bushmen in South Africa. But like, play would be a really important aspect of their day to day. So they would teach their kids through play, and then also that helped them to regulate their nervous system. That also helped because they're hunter gatherer people, and they'd be, they're warriors as well. So anytime that they went out, it was really important for them to play and connect to that playful side of themselves. Um, so that helped them to also connect with life as well, because like it's almost as if like kids play from such a young age, and I'm just like, when did we stop playing?
Hmm.
When did we stop playing and be playful? And I just think like when you're looking at a baby, or you're in the presence of any young person, it's just like when they're playing, they're just so creative, and it's just like constantly just bringing that forward with you, of like that sense of playfulness and being childlike in your spirit. So I just think that's a really important thing, and I think that is actually really encouraged in a lot of, say, like land-based cultures. Or when I went to Zimbabwe, I think the main thing I really remember was laughing over there so much, because when I went into this new environment, and met with these people, like Mandaza Kandemwa was his name, and um they were from such a cool such I was blown away, because they're like, your family, and I'm like, I just met you. And they're like, and he was getting me to hug all his kids, and he's like, this is your brother, this is your sister. And I was just like, oh my god. I was just like, very much, I was like, I'm just like someone coming in to learn. And I kind of separated myself um from the entire family there, but they're like, no, they're your brothers and your sisters. And I was just like, yeah. I was just like, yeah. Or I think it's really like when I was at home in Ireland, it was like, your family, and then there are other people outside of that, and it's just like they're not part of your family. And I was just like, oh
Mm.
no. It was kind of like looking at everyone as your friend and looking at everyone as your family, which, looking at it more in a heartfelt way, instead of like, you know, I
Mm.
suppose having to learn to trust people again, was a big thing for me. So I think, and I laughed so much over there, and that was the main thing. I was just like, yeah, he was like, remember to laugh, and the laughing spirit is so important, and it's like it's such a great way to just be with yourself. When was the last time you laughed? When was the last time you danced? Play, cry. So that's a really good way of
Mm.
checking in with yourself. When was the good time you had a good belly laugh?
Yeah.
So
If we're
it's
forgetting to
yeah,
do that, then we're doing something wrong.
yeah, because yeah, you can have all the knowledge, but like, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
Have a good
you
laugh
have
at
to
it.
have a laugh. Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that way of looking at other people as your brothers and sisters, rather than you know this is the boundary. This is my
Mm.
family. I look after them, but you're outside of that, so I don't treat you the same.
Mm-hmm.
We would be myself and yourself would be good friends. We've lots of other
Yeah,
friends that you might call brother, or you might
yeah,
sometimes say sister as well. But it's
yeah.
yeah, it's just like why do we make these separations? And I know logically you do have to probably more provide for your family directly, but in terms of how we treat others, it's like why not treat others with that same compassion and respect as
Mm.
we treat our immediate family. So yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lovely thought, and I think that's one of the beauties of expanding our minds and looking
Mm.
beyond our own upbringing and our own culture to actually look at there is other ways of living beyond
Mm.
what we've been brought up with, and yeah, just to try these things out and put on these different ways of looking at the world, and seeing what ways we want to live moving forward. So
Yeah.
there's no set rules. We're following what we've always done, but maybe just to expand our minds and open up to what is a way of living that's more in harmony with ourselves, each other, and the earth.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So yeah, Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm sure we could have kept talking about some other of the interesting topics there that we've touched on, but yeah, is there anything you want to say to finish, apart from that everyone has a voice? We've got that one pretty clear. Everyone
Yeah.
can sing.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say to before we close out?
Do something that makes you laugh.
Mm,
That's my. If you do anything today, try and find something that makes you laugh. So
nice. Yeah.
and connects in with that as well. So I have nothing else to say.
It's all your wisdom now is dried up. But thank you. Yeah, really enjoyed that podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on a bit of a journey with different topics, and yeah, it was just great to get your insight on those things. And I feel more excited to even delve a bit more into the creativity side of things and go have a good laugh. So
Yeah, lovely stuff.
but yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and yeah, it's been great having you as one of our facilitators at Wolf Academy. You've brought a lot of great energy and ideas to the workshops, and also, yeah, you're a great facilitator, and the students really love the way you bring that creative aspect into the workshops too. So thanks for that, and
Thanks very
we
much,
look
Cormac.
forward to chatting to you again soon.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Thanks very much, Cormac.
Slán go fóill.
Slán go fóill.